show about the biggest league in the world that's gotten significantly smaller these days with the postseason in full concourse. With Ryan 𝗧𝗵𝗂𝗲. Don't think I used concourse correctly there. With course, as the Latins say, and I mean the Roman Latins, we're already off the tracks. He's in Phoenix, Arizona. John Morrissey, proudly sporting the club that resides in Rhode Island and beat
Survival of the
Charleston
fittest.
Battery. He's in New York. New York, I'm a very sick boy. Peyton Gallagher in Florida, hence the Albanian attire that I am sporting today. Up the Royals. Okay, playoffs. The primary note, I think, if we are to do a large-scale autopsy of what we just saw over the weekend, which was manic chaos at the highest regard in the USL, the most chaotic opening weekend probably ever, John. I think that establishing that historical baseline with you feels appropriate before we dive into what the weekend meant.
This is a league that's always defined by parity come playoff time. Normally, the upsets are limited to maybe one or two of the high-profile teams losing. You don't see three of your top four clubs entering the postseason drop like this, and especially, we'll get into it with Louisville City,
Right.
but a club that lost one time in the regular season and was setting records. Even teams like Sacramento and Charleston that have done it before, have managers everyone trusts, for them to go out in the manner that they did, where they really looked quite flat for most of their performances, I think only added to the intrigue of what we saw and it added to that sense of parity from top to bottom.
Ryan, we have been around the league for a couple of years. We were around the league the first season, I believe, that we were working with Phoenix Rising in 2022. We saw, no, that was the 2023 season. It was the reason Charleston got to the final. Tampa lost in the first round as the 2 seed to Birmingham, and also the 1 seed Pittsburgh lost to Detroit, ironically, the team that they will face now because Detroit did it again to Louisville, which we'll talk about here in a minute. We've seen that before. We've seen weirdness. The fact that we lost 3 of the top 4 seeds in terms of the 1 and 2 in the East and the West this early changes the complexion of the playoffs in a way that's fascinating, but we've got big questions, I think, to answer about what that says about this year and where the league is right now.
I think firstly, and they're all independent events, so what I say is not correlated at all. I think it's really interesting that we lose 3 of the top 4 the year after we don't lose any of the top
Yeah,
4
sure.
for the first time ever. Last year, all the 1s and 2 seeds made it out of the first round. I thought that was really, kind of an odd occurrence. And we'll talk about the goals thing. I think that's what you want me to get to there. Firstly, a message for Tony Scholes. This is what happens when you don't let Mael go into the playoffs. You get
Sure.
no goals.
I mean,
You
we've
get
been
no
saying it all
goals if
year.
there's no Mael involved.
He is all the
So,
goals.
yeah, 6 goals in 8 matches. That is, do the math, 3/4, 0.75 per game. Like the average USL Championship playoff match over the last decade, and Peyton, you can confirm it for me, I think is 3 goals per game.
That is the number we found, correct?
It was
You
just an
found.
astonishingly defensive minded opening 8 games. And I think that comes down to teams not wanting to lose and tactical similarity. Obviously, teams don't want to lose. In the playoffs, a lot of the mentality shifts from win the game, don't make mistakes, but let's try and go get something out of this to, oh my God, we can't make a mistake. There's no chance in hell we make a mistake in a postseason game or we will lose. Because if you allow one team to capitalize on a mistake from you, you've practically handed them a win. So you couple that with a lot of teams now in the USL Championship, and we've talked about it a lot this year, playing very similarly. Direct, through the channels, looking for what we have called field tilt all year. And that has become the popular term across the world of controlling where the ball is and where you are dominating. Yes, I don't have the ball, but you have the ball 10 yards from your goal. So I have the upper hand. That's what a lot of teams want to do in the USL Championship nowadays. And when you couple that with let's not make mistakes, you get a lot of direct, you get a lot of tight knit and really weird tactical 45-minute just I'm going to move my pawn one space, you move your pawn one space, and that's the move. No one wants to really engage in the powerful pieces on the board because it's a risk and one that's not worth taking. I think that's what we saw this week in grand effect.
John, in terms of just what it speaks to in the tactical sense and what Ryan was talking to, we had tracked that we were noting a downtick in the explosive nature of some of these games throughout the year. There weren't the crooked numbers. The goals were roughly down across the league, but not to an extent that would have informed what we saw over the weekend. So, in your mind, just I guess in what this means now in the here and now, the lack of goals tells you what about where the league is on its trajectory and development as a division?
Yeah, I think it relates to the field tilt idea and the fact that the clubs that were most successful this season
Mm-hmm.
focused on getting to the final third, staying there, and avoiding transitional opportunities after you turn the ball over. So you're trying to get to your block and control that phase of play without providing space for the opposition in transitional moments. What that means is that these games tend to be pretty low event. When a team gets to attack, it is happening against a set defense in a low block. And when you throw two systems like that against one another, it means that it's just going to be hard to buy space. Then you throw in the element of what Ryan was talking about, that risk aversion that comes come November, where clubs don't want to be, or players don't want to be the guy who's making the key mistake by getting out over their skis. I think that applies to managers as well. I've talked all year about like Luke Spencer and Tulsa really making impactful substitutions. He made one sub in 90 minutes
Mm.
before extra time there. So you even see it with the strategies of if we, again, to borrow a phrase, if we move one piece on the chessboard, maybe it all comes crumbling down. It just feels like these teams are focusing on the same ends to such an extent that in this environment, it really drives the scoring to a minimum.
I do want to, before giving it to you here, Ryan, kind of, I guess, follow in on the point that you just made with the substitutions. I think that's reflexive in the fact that we had three of these games that finished 0-0
Mhm.
after 120 minutes, whereas you would expect substitutes to come on in mass and affect the stagnation of a game. It just didn't happen over the course of the weekend because no matter what's happening, to get through 120 minutes on three occasions without a single goal is anomalous. So, Ryan, with that being said, go ahead and say what you were about to.
To your point on the extra time as well, I think I sent Mr. Oracle here a text yesterday remarking at 𝗬𝗲𝗴𝘂𝗂 and Kevin Partita engaging in a 20 pass sequence between just themselves as they walked up the pitch in a nil-nil game in extra time with a man advantage trying to, or I guess technically not a man advantage,
Yeah,
but
no.
down to 10 where there's more space, and you could theoretically increase the tempo of a match. Rip Roro. But like nobody wanted to win because they were too scared about losing. And I think that is okay in the postseason. That's where I wanted to go with that is I've looked at this year in the USL and the uptick in the coaching quality in my mind, the uptick in the playing quality, the very clear, undeniable growth in sporting continuity within a lot of the organizations. Teams knowing what they want to do, teams knowing what their identity is, their ethos is at a club level, and building on that. I think that's undeniable across the league. But when you get into the postseason, no matter what your identity is, if you're Dennis Sanchez and you want to have 800 passes a match, or you're Louisville City, who, if you want to score a goal every 25 passes, like those are your goals. It does not matter. All of these teams' identities, in a lot of ways, go out the window, and it becomes what does it take to win? And in so many leagues, I think across the world, what it takes to win is not conceding, being safe, not making mistakes, and we have really, really got a weird thing on hand where a lot of coaches at the same time are saying, we want to develop systems, we want to play a certain way, but we also want to win trophies, and the best way to do that is to kick the crap out of the ball, and that's not fully accurate, but launch it up the channel, defend space in their half, force a mistake into the opposition, and make sure we don't make one. That's the most effective way to win trophies, and all these teams want to do that.
Yeah, I view, I am somebody who tends to try and look for the hopeful side of life a lot of the time before my logical brain absolutely beats that little nymph in my head over the head with a hammer. Um, but in my mind, I don't want to submit to that idea, right? That these teams are so pragmatic that it's taking the bravery out of the game. I just felt like there was a lot of tedium and in the passages of possession that we saw from good teams. Like it didn't feel like they had ideas when the good teams in the league that we saw throughout the regular season had the ball. And we did see that in moments, I guess, throughout the year. Like Louisville had competency with the ball in moments, but kind of struggled towards the end of the season. Same thing with Charleston, who were a beautiful, flowy side at times during the middle part of the year. Sacramento flirted with some really good offensive moments, but by the end of the year, they had stalled out. So I think maybe a larger thing might be a play that I've hinted at throughout the course of the year that I can't really account for or explain. It just felt like a lot of teams ran out of gas this year. And that's not to discredit the accomplishments of teams that won in the first round. But as I assess this first round and watching it, it just felt like a lot of the teams were playing in a way that represented a degree of exhaustion that, again, I don't know how to quantify.
I think that's right. I think we've got to a point in the year where everything is a bit predictable. You could have predicted that Louisville lineup and known exactly how they were going to play, what patterns they wanted to take advantage of. And if you're Detroit coming into that environment, you've spent the last whatever stretch of time watching tape, understanding how do we need to position ourselves in long restarts? What should the low block look like to make sure that Louisville stalls out? I think Charleston played their game and at least tried to play their game, and that was just an expert game plan from Connor Smith. There's the argument to make in favor of a lot of these underdog sides where it's a marker of their success and their quality that so many of these games were ground to a halt. When you are on the road in the playoffs, it is to your advantage to
Yeah.
try to make the game as slow as possible.
I
And to me, that's probably a signifier of that leveling that we've seen from number one to 24 this year,
yeah.
really making itself felt in the postseason.
That second part is true, but like the reality is Rhode Island did this as a low seed underdog that won multiple games on the road, all their games on the road in the Eastern Conference playoffs last year by outscoring teams and getting goals. And like you look at these results that we just talked about and the teams that won the games, Orange County, Detroit, Rhode Island, only scored one goal between them and were able to move on because these dominant teams in the league didn't get a goal, which feels preposterous. That feels more about the higher seeded teams than the lower seeded teams to me, is I guess the point I'm saying. So that may just be a repackaging of exactly what you just said, but that's what
With you
feels
on I'm with
standout.
you on that with Louisville and Sacramento, certainly, where
Yeah,
there was a level of execution in the final third that never arrived, and I think that was surprising. I do push back in Rhode
a
Island
little
because
bit on.
I thought
Yeah,
they were
fair,
just so perfectly designed there. And it
fair.
was a repeat of what we saw, frankly, at Patriots Point last season.
Yeah,
Physical marking through the midfield, trying to stop Charleston from those quick passing sequences through the thirds. But your point is well taken nonetheless.
yeah, and to a degree on that, John, very similar to how Rhode Island just was successful against Charleston 2 months
Right.
ago, right?
Yeah.
So,
Right.
yeah,
I think that was easily, by the way, the best match of the first round. Those are the only, that was really the only match I felt like both those teams clearly wanted to win a game. And I don't know if it fully carried over into extra time after the first of two double sending offs of the day. But like that was the only match where I thought both teams wanted to win. I think going back to something John said earlier that I just want to get out of the way, you're 100% correct, John, that we knew exactly what we were going to get out of Louisville. We knew exactly what we were going to get out of Detroit. They played the same 11, I think, back to back weeks. And you
yeah,
said on the show that Jay Chapman is going to be in midfield and they need him to play well, right? Like we knew what we were going to get out of Detroit. I almost want to say, and this feels really dumb to say because you can have such a much more high level discussion on the whys. Luck. Detroit got lucky. They created some of that luck with 𝗟𝗲𝗴𝘂𝗲 and being physical and exploiting maybe the one or two weaknesses that we've seen from Louisville which is at times an inability to create if they're allowed to have too much of the ball, and also defending a big runner in space that can put their center backs in kind of weird spots. But Detroit got lucky, and they'll tell you that, and they hope they get lucky and force their own luck next
Yeah.
week. And Orange County got lucky. Roro Lopez had 3 shots that he could have scored. Russell Cicerone had a wide open far post goal, and there were 3 or 4 bodies in the way, yes, but Russell Cicerone in the playoffs missed a big chance inside the 18-yard box. There's a little bit of luck there for Orange County. Charleston lost in a shootout. Now, Luis Zamudio was dire in said shootout.
Yeah.
It's no coincidence they could not get it done, unfortunately. But a shootout is the personification of luck in the game, right? So that's such a massive part of this for me is that all these teams at the bottom had a major amount of luck involved, but also when you make the game lower scoring, all it takes is one chance, one lucky moment. And that's maybe credit to the lower seeds as well, and why it's maybe more about them for me than the top seeds. To counter Peyton's point, is they made these games stodgier. They made these games marginal. And in marginal moments, all it takes is one thing to go your way, and you can get it done. And this year, we just saw it at an abnormal rate to one side rather than the other, I feel like.
Okay. Let's now focus on the games uniquely, and give them their just due. So obviously we start with the Detroit game. What should come without any kind of asterisks, the biggest upset in the history of the division. Louisville had lost one game. I think we all kind of had submitted to the idea that this is probably the greatest USL championship team ever, at least certainly in the championship Div 2 era, right, compared to their contemporaries. Detroit limp into the playoffs. Nobody gives them a shot. And the reason why Louisville should have been, you know, impregnable to this kind of thing happening is the set piece prowess, is all the different ways that they manufacture ways to potentially manufacture a goal in a game like this. It just doesn't happen. John, they only put 3 shots on target, and it's a massive credit to Detroit to get the goal, to give themselves the platform to do this, to do something that we probably wouldn't have estimated they were capable of defensively. But beyond that, where did the ideas, I guess, fail for Louisville and how this team was constructed to do a thing that they just didn't do in the end?
So much, and you're right to mention the set pieces and that aspect of Louisville's game. So much of their success relies on recovering the ball after a long pass into the midfield, that restart phase, where then you quickly are able to move into the final third before the defense can get set. That lets you find space, that sets up the counter pressure if you do turn the ball over. There are so many short field opportunities that Louisville takes advantage of. That was never on offer in this match because of the way Detroit set themselves up. It was what I would probably call a 5-4-1, a shape we really haven't seen in that middle phase of play.
Mm-hmm.
And it worked so compact to stop Louisville from having that ability to break with any sense of tempo. You throw that into the mix, you just look at the heart that Detroit brought to the table. And I know that's something you can't quantify, and it's a little bit hacky to say, but they wanted that thing. These are guys that have been at the club for a while, mixed with a handful of new additions that have really fit in with the ethos of Detroit City. They just felt like they understood, here's how we're going to
Yeah.
defend. When we get the ball, we are going to try to force Adams and Tosh out of position and take advantage of the remainder of the back line. Then you take a lead, you get Stephen Carroll into the game, basically use 4 center backs at a time. It was a survival mode, certainly at the end of this game. But hey, Louisville, what, only completed 19% of their crosses. They weren't efficient. They didn't have the options. I don't know if Danny Cruz got it right, frankly, by going with Ownby and Lancaster. It was what he had on offer, but I don't know if they're game changers at this point in their career.
Yeah.
And yeah, and to Ryan, what he said earlier, there was a little bit of luck involved. I think Ownby could have finished one and added time. Tosh had a chance in the box.
Yeah.
That's not how it went, and here we are.
Second lowest percentage of their duels won in a game this year for Louisville,
Hmm.
against a Detroit team that wasn't a team for a duel all season long, and that was their biggest pitfall in many of the games that they lost. Ryan, what was your instant reaction upon realizing that this had actually happened?
So we were in El Paso getting set up for the Phoenix Rising Radio Network broadcast, and we're sitting there pre-recording a conversation with Brandon McCarthy, the sporting director at Phoenix, and we are watching the game as we are getting ready to go. And we're just sitting here looking at it. It's about the 80th minute. And this is when it finally clicks for me. Seen the goal, seen the first 75 minutes in bits and pieces, and in the 80th minute I go, they don't have the guys out there.
Yeah.
Goodrum didn't do it in the first half. He did not have enough. Jansen Wilson didn't do enough. Taylor Davila and Kevin Lambert weren't going to be able to impact a game like this with all the center backs on the pitch. And Lancaster and Ownby on the pitch, as John pointed out, not the right guys at this stage in 2025 to change a match. Danny Cruz, also as John just points out, didn't have much else to call upon. Niall McCabe, but it's the same deal, even to a lesser extent, really. And we're just sitting there, and it clicks for me to look to the guy who we're about to talk to, who had been around for a lot of the Phoenix teams and seen all that and gone through the history of the Phoenix teams in the 2019 through 2021 era groups that were so dominant. And he just goes, it's so hard to do this. It's so hard to be
Mm,
on the beach in August, knowing you've won the West, even if you're chasing a points title. And he said, yeah, we chased points titles those years. We wanted the records. We wanted the most wins. We wanted all these things that Louisville now has, this Louisville team now has. It's still hard to prepare yourself mentally for the grind and the emotion of you have to win this game. Detroit was just a little more mentally ready. It feels wild to say because of how much Louisville has been described as this team that is a mentality monster, is up for every game, is ready to. We saw it today. You can be up for every game, every match, but if one team is up for a playoff match and has been up for a playoff match each of the last 4 weeks, knowing that if they don't do anything, they go home. There's just a different level of care, of intensity, and that was when it clicked for me. Was asking a guy who'd been a part of these or seen this,
yeah,
and
sure.
he was like, "This doesn't." He just looked like it didn't surprise him. It surprised every single person I think around the league and media circles. Didn't surprise this guy, and I was like, it takes one to know one, I guess. Louisville just wasn't prepared mentally, and I don't think that's on Danny Cruz. I don't think that's on the players. It's
Yeah,
just a weird circumstance where a team that was really damn good all year was really just not up for it as much as a team that was really damn bad all
eh,
year, but got in because they had to be like this all
yeah.
year long, the last month of the year.
And I think it's important to also just kind of add evidence to that. John, it didn't really feel like Louisville were up for it in the way that you would imagine before the goal went in
Mm.
from 𝗟𝗏𝗄𝗃𝗀. They weren't generating things. And in reality, that just carried over after Detroit actually defined the game.
I spent the first 30, 40 minutes every single time Louisville got on the ball, it was mentally like, oh, okay, this is the moment where we're going to see classic Louisville come out. And it never really happened. There was never the sense of flow.
Yeah.
The press was pretty ineffective throughout, and Detroit smartly played over it. It just felt like Louisville, to everything we've said, didn't have that sharpness and that mentality.
Yeah. I think there had been a common misnomer from people who hadn't really been closely watching Louisville this year that they had become a more antagonistic, more negative side because the possession number was lower, when that couldn't have been further from the actual truth, which was, again, we are giving you the ball, but it's so that we can then pull the carpet like this and make it so you're trying to run uphill the entire game. But the reality of that was, and as we called out earlier in the season, I think me most vocally, for right or for wrong, and at times, revisiting it, maybe as a little bit unfair to a guy like Philip Goodrum at the early going of the season. But the same problems that I called in that moment were the problems that undid them here. Philip Goodrum was not the leader in this game in box touches for Louisville. It was Jake Morris. That is a problem. Who is going to be the guy in a moment like this who says, all right, I'll have it, and gets it done. And that feels like an oversimplification. But when the system can't be the star because of game state and the stakes get high and things get extreme like this, it just didn't feel like there was anybody who could be that Uno reverse card for how the game was in human form.
Just to build on your Jake Morris thing there for a second, he played 22 minutes in this match.
Also, that
Like he didn't play, and he was the most impactful player.
Philip Kudrum didn't have a shot.
Yeah,
He didn't have a single shot. Not a
that's why
shot
they
on target.
lost.
Didn't have a shot. Right.
And I want to say it's why they lost, but it's not necessary. And I think it's worth prefacing Philip Goodrum has a part to play in that number.
Yeah.
Him
It's
not
not his
having a
fault
shot,
though.
it's
Yes.
not his fault. Because as a number nine, you can only be asked to score the goals. You've been given a chance to do so. He was not given a chance to do so all match. It was just about as stale of a performance as I've seen from a Louisville City team in the last 5 years. It did not make any sense. And I think Detroit had a bit of a part to play with that, obviously, with how they set up, very defensive, letting Louisville have the ball, who had about 8 million more passes than they usually do. And it was kind of a curveball. Taylor Davila couldn't do enough. A player that I think is, for me, he was an all league selection for us when we went through that because of how impactful he is getting close to goal. But in a game like this where you think, oh, we've got a lot of the ball, Taylor Davila is going to be closer to goal. He's going to have chances to create and be impactful in the attacking third. Everything was in front of him. And I think Taylor Davila is very good with a lot of the get on the turn, bounce one forward, drive forward, carrying, moving, driving the team on. He had nowhere to go because once he turned around, Detroit had dropped in, understood the game plan, effectively executed, and deserves a ton of credit for
I
such.
a number that pops out that I think is instructive about like just Taylor Davila and his lack of capacity to influence the game, maybe partially because of the guys around them. We talked a lot about Ray Serrano being the guy in the early season that would get them unstuck in a moment like this, right? That could be that tight area technician that with two touches could completely unlock a game. He had to be that guy. How many passes do we think of all the passes, the second most in a game this year from Louisville, at 451? How many of those passes traveled from Taylor Davila to Ray Serrano? One. Which
It's
with
not good
the
enough.
it's like yes, your
Not good
best
enough.
players just were not in any kind of connected structure at all. Like you want those players to. It was always in my mind, John, and answer me if I'm wrong about this, but like in these moments, you would lean on three guys if you were Louisville: Taylor Davila, Ray Serrano, Philip Goodrum, and those guys never felt like they found any kind of connectivity to one another.
Which I think speaks to Detroit and what we saw from Devin Mensah and Shane Wheat at those wide center back
Yeah.
spots.
Yes. Yes.
Those two didn't make a mistake in 90 plus minutes. They were physical when they needed to be. They understood when to step back. Mensah kind of did this elbow thing when they were taking long goal kicks of almost pushing in like a midfielder to help in second ball situations. Danny Dichio knew exactly what you were saying. They've got these three players who really can break us down. Okay, we're not going to let them get touches in the final third. And that's exactly what happened.
Yep. Um, just any other individual performances that you think are worth noting here?
I think the
Some
only
of
thing
them
I
maybe.
want to add onto this, and I
Yeah.
will give you an individual performance that I enjoyed, but Danny Cruz is the best manager in the USL Championship, I think for
Yep.
me. I
Agreed.
don't think that's questionable. I think I can have a dialogue with Ben Pierman. It's apples to oranges, but Danny Cruz is the best manager in this league. The fact that he, chasing a game, took off Philip Goodrum and Ray Serrano at the hour mark blew my mind. I understand they didn't give you much. I understand you want to get difference makers on the pitch and for like Sam Gleadle and Brian Ownby and Jake Morris more in particular impacted the game. Taking two of your four best players and at the very least two of your three most impactful goal threat players off the pitch chasing a match was wild to me. I don't think Goodrum is the box presence that, Lancaster was or Ownbeek with late runs is, so it makes sense to try and beat a low block. He's still your best goal scorer. Coaches make weird decisions that cost teams games, even the best of them do, and I thought that was just something that I had to get out. I was that anybody who's saying Danny Cruz did a terrible job in this game is correct. That does not change the fact that this is a guy who in 2 years could very well be the best manager in league history. Um, like
What
that's
does
just
Danny Cruz do differently? Like, what's the
That was
counterfactual?
the question I was going to
Yeah.
yeah.
ask.
I don't know, but Ray Serrano's got to be on that pitch for 100 minutes. He has to.
I am with you. That's me with Goodrum of like he's the guy you paid a record transfer fee for. He's the only striker on this team that's got that
If I'm a
ability.
sporting director who made that move, I'm looking at this guy, and again, I'm not the Louisville City sporting director. I'm not saying this is what happened. I'm looking at this guy going, what's going on here? Like, yeah, you're the coach. You get to make these calls. You run the trainings. You defer to that. But Philip Goodrum, as you pointed out, league record internal signing. Ray Serrano has been their most impactful player in terms of against a low block for most of the season. It was it baffled me to no end. It was
Yeah.
just a wild moment. I was stunned.
Yeah. You just wonder about the psychic baggage aspects of it, of like, I think that listening to Sean Tosh talk about it on USL All Access, listening to Danny Cruz talk about it, like, I think this year was kind of the UVA UMBC year for Louisville mentality wise. Like, they were like, never again. They built the team to do a playoff run and to be dominant every time out. And the mentality was as sharp as it comes. Like, it shouldn't be possible to only lose one game in this league with that level of variance. That is an obscene accomplishment that doesn't go away because of what happened. Like, that is the reality. All these other leagues across the world, Louisville is just the champion, and that's it, right?
The champion and the undisputed greatest team in the
In
history
the
of the
history of the
league,
Yeah.
in
league.
any other
Yes,
Yep.
league. Yeah.
100%.
Teams are
This,
built to win regular seasons.
yeah,
You hope
not
those
here
teams
though.
are built. You hope those. Yeah, you hope those teams carry over and can win these one-offs week after week. But it's
Yeah,
just a different world. As for
uh,
the player you asked for, Isaiah LaFleur won 12 of 18
that's what I was
duels.
gonna say.
He
Yeah,
won
like
12 of 18 duels. He was in 18 duels. That was this match,
at
and he
fullback, at
won
On
fullback.
the
two-thirds
on
of
the
them.
Aiden McFadden side, that is their axis to get into the final third. LaFleur battled him even, if not better than, and that was huge.
Yeah, on what was only his 10th appearance for Detroit City. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
it is so
gnarly.
strange. This is
Well,
so much different.
after he, by the way, real quick, he's the player who gets the takeaway and scores the goal against
Yeah,
Tampa Bay to get them into the playoffs. Like
100%.
what a loan signing he's been.
On
Yep.
his John Stenberg run.
Yeah.
But like, this is so much of a different thing, I think, than when Detroit did this to Pittsburgh. Ironically, again, who they will play on the other side of this game. When they beat Pittsburgh as the 1 seed and they were the 8 2 years ago, I think, John, we didn't know you at that point in time. There was a sense that Pittsburgh were probably a little bit fakey, right? Like,
Very.
For
Albert Deco
sure.
won the Golden Boot. They won the Shield. Albert Deco, it felt like scored 15 penalties that year. Um, this is different. This shouldn't have happened. This did happen. It's a massive testament. Honestly, greatest individual performance in this game, Danny Dicio's jacket. I think that's why they won.
He'll wear it next
Uh,
week now for sure, I hope.
like, literally the full blown NWA era Oakland Raiders satin jacket, Detroit versus everybody. And like, I can't believe that he got his team after what they look like throughout the course of the year to represent that. Just this league, like, it's a trademark. Excuse me, I've not cursed on the show the entire year. But I think if there was a time to do it, it is this. So, I think we said all the things about this. Yes, we said many
Mm.
things.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
okay, let's talk about. I think we'll save the row of it all for last. Let's do Charleston in the middle of this upsetment sandwich, the Oreo of doom, if you will. 0-0, crazy game. Cano Smith accepts that he's the Joker and executes that role like Philip Seymour Hoffman.
You
Or no,
just
I got that right, right? I'm with the two movies.
Heath
no
Ledger.
Phillips
No,
Heath
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 Ledger.
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 Yeah.
Philip Seymour
Yeah.
Hoffman is
In a
in.
lot of other movies, The
Yes.
Master, but
Yeah.
he's a bad dude. He's an awesome bad dude in a very different way than
Yeah, so
Heath
close
Ledger
to
was.
having a really good line and just
Yeah,
muddled it. Yeah.
Philip Seymour Hoffman is Truman Capote.
This match is absolutely, and I don't know. I think I've read a lot, I've watched a lot, I've listened to a lot. I don't know if how many Jope has gotten the praise I think he deserves from this match. He was absolutely immense in this game. I felt like, and over the course of this season for Rhode Island. I do really think he's the reason they're able to win this match because they can move around Frank Nadarce. They can move around 𝗟𝗲𝗴𝘂𝗲 much more effectively because they have this absolute linchpin of a player on the ball at the back still to where they can afford to move Baccarat up into the midfield where he can be a little longer, be a little rangier. They can have another tall player on the pitch, which is clearly very important in the postseason as it's gone or as it's trending. I just thought he was so good for 120 minutes, scored his penalty, which helps. But really, he is the reason I think this version of Rhode Island now exists. He's allowed them to have extra pieces to move around, which we know Kano loves to do, much to the chagrin of Peyton, and like
I
we'll
mean,
get into that.
yeah.
But like, I just wanted to start there because I thought from a player perspective, the one guy I hadn't seen enough of in all these articles, all these verbiages of the first round was him, and I thought he was so good, and he's the reason Rhode Island are able to win a game like this.
Yeah. Uh, the thing that stood out to me, I guess, is the Hugo Bacharach in midfield thing has turned into the Frank Nodarcy wingback thing from last year
Hmm.
of like that's just flipping been a brilliant thing for them and was so essential in this game. With that observation being stated, a question that's banging around in my mind, I guess, for you, John, is what did you enjoy the most out of this game specifically? Take that wherever you want to.
Well, I think you're right to point out Bacharach. I mean, with the ball at his feet, he's a Rolls Royce. He is so smooth. He can just stride through the midfield. And when you're facing a team like Charleston, the key after you take the ball away is to overcome that first wave of counter pressure, solidify yourself. And Bacharach did that every time he got a touch.
Yeah.
And the way that he is able to cover space and did so in tandem with 𝗟𝗲𝗴𝘂𝗲 in that pivot really made it difficult for Charleston to build through the lines like they always try to do. It shouldn't have been a surprise, I guess, that 𝗟𝗲𝗴𝗂 was in that midfield. Smith has known him for the better part of a decade, if not longer.
Yeah.
He trusts him implicitly. And we saw that 𝗟𝗲𝗴𝗂 still has the legs on him. So you throw him next to a Bacharach in that pivot, suddenly, how can you hit MD Myers at his feet? How can you try to play a through ball to Cal Jennings or take advantage of the wingers and they tuck inside? It just disrupted everything that makes Charleston Charleston. And that to me was maybe something I didn't expect Rhode Island to be organized enough to
Yeah.
do, hence why it impressed me so much.
So significant to have a guy like Bacharach to just screen that void that we've talked a lot about with this donut of destruction that Battery have offered to teams this year, where it's the two dueling tens, two lower lying players, and then two forwards that will drop in and trade places. It's so difficult for a defense to match that because center backs are put in this bind of like, hey, do I really follow up here and leave us potentially exposed with the striker? Or do I allow a striker to drop into a massive patch of space, just pick up the ball? Bacharach did a great job of fronting that, preventing that, and forcing Battery to play through wider areas to get access to those forwards in less dangerous places. Ryan, for you, with Charleston, their lack of capacity to generate answers, maybe tactically, to how Battery were faced with these questions by Rhode Island, I think that was maybe a little bit surprising in this game.
We just talked about the best manager in the league getting out coached a little bit earlier. I think the second best manager in the league got out coached in this match, and that was pretty evident in the battle in midfield. All the selections I thought Cano Smith made were very very well done. Bacharach we expected to be in midfield. 𝗟𝗲𝗴𝗂𝗲, as John pointed out, was immense with the legs. Amos Shapiro Thompson has been one of the more
Yeah,
surprising
man.
players I think in the league this year, just from a you should be a bit part player on a team that might have to do a job once every 4 matches. Now he feels almost imperatively versatile to how they want to set up and how they want to execute things. Um, Connell Smith ticked every button correctly, including the late subs. I thought Dwayne Atkinson, when he came on, was a little bit of a live wire. When he was on the pitch, the red card changed some things there. Both his substitutions scored their penalties. Um, and really, I think that's what it's down to is, in a weird way, Connell Smith, who I think we have, I don't want to say trashed this year because trashed feels harsh for what the show is about, but we have let everybody know that Connell Smith
Yeah.
has not done a good job or as good of a job as he should have done this year. He's got a winning record, I believe, over Ben Pierman. I think the only other manager who has that is Danny Cruz.
Yeah. That is
Like,
accurate. That is
he's
accurate. He's won
great in
3 of
he's great
5
in
in
these
this way.
games.
Yeah.
He's great in these games and these environments at galvanizing a group, which is so important in a playoff match. And I enjoyed the midfield not pressing, not putting too much. They challenged Charleston aggressively, but in a different way. They forced Charleston to find the holes, find the pockets to beat them. And when they couldn't, then it felt like Rhode Island committed. Then it felt like Rhode Island said, "We're going to go." They let Charleston not do what they wanted, but control a lot of it for the first hour. And then the last half hour, and for most of extra time, the better team was Rhode Island. They waited, they bid their time, they won the shootout. I thought it was a expertly crafted postseason plan that got Rhode Island another Eastern Conference win. They've never lost a game in
Yeah,
the
in
Eastern
the Eastern
Conference
Conference,
playoffs.
true. And all 4 of them have come away from home. And this was so much different than the ones that happened last year, right? Where this just felt like it was you were watching, it's the difference between like a Pollock painting and an opera, right? Like this one was much more the second one, where it's like you find the beauty in the strain, uh, to get it done. And yeah, I'm not gonna call this boring because it was quite interesting. Um, but yeah, like this I think is a better representation of Kano's capacity as a manager than anything that happened in last year's playoff. I think that's the point that I want to make the most.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, I think last year's playoffs, just to put a button on it, they were a testament to a year-long process to find what that team could be. This was an individual outburst where every single personnel choice, tactical and shape decision that Kano made was perfectly designed to slow Charleston down. And those are equally beautiful things that really define why Kano is such a great manager at the end of the day.
And to be fair, I don't know if we've ever really critiqued Rhode Island defensively this year. It's all been
No,
about the ceiling that they should have been able to reach with the ball at their feet. We never once said Rhode Island can't defend to save their lives. Very clearly, they can. This is the 13th clean sheet in 31 games this year, second most in the league, only behind Louisville. They understand how to keep a team off the board at a very high level, which, aligned with the theme of this week, might have actually played, um, in their favor in
yeah.
the end.
I mean, guys, Maxi Rodriguez played 2 minutes out of 120. Um, the only other things I think that are worth maybe saying here are first and foremost, 𝗂𝗲𝗵𝗂𝗂, Ryan, I think you may have said he might be one of the most influential players in this postseason a week ago. Was terrific on the box command aspects and keeping organization, keeping composure in moments where the ball was entered into the box. It doesn't come away with a ton of saves, but I felt like in the aerial moments was really good. And then beyond that, the Clay Holstead use in this game to neutralize some of the aspects of the width that Charleston had. Um, Not my favorite expression of the sport ever, but again, you can't fault Cano Smith for pressing the right button for the right moment.
Yeah, it's brute force Clay Holstead. It stops Graham Smith and Langston Blackstock from developing that rhythm. Lets you match Charleston when they drop into the three because Holstead is just such a presence. Again, not pretty, but it's exactly what the game called for.
Okay,
Yeah.
last thing here. Are we over-indexing on the brutalist architecture of this? Is it just a concrete block? Like, are we doing too much, or was it really this brilliant from Cano Smith?
I thought it was really smart.
Okay.
Brilliant feels harsh
Okay.
because I think brilliance has a layer of beauty to it, along with the intelligence. There wasn't a lot of beauty here, but it was certainly intelligent.
Okay. All right.
Do you not want to,
100%.
do you not want 2 minutes as the goalkeeper guy to give 2 cents on Luis Zamudio in the shootout, or are you just going to
No.
kind of leave
No, no,
that
no.
be?
We're gonna let that lie.
The less said about that, the better. And that's a favor for
The
Luis.
last one, like I've been there before on the last one. Um, that is, I have no idea what's happening. Everything is blurry, and this is
Neither does
Mr.
he.
Krabs' meme. Um,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
no, and
mean,
that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't even trust my reactions enough to make a reaction. That's not a good
that's the
place
only
to
thing
be.
I ask from a
Yeah,
goalkeeper in a shootout is
dive.
move, and that's what we got from Ted Cadono. Like he committed. He was jumping across the post on every single one in that in the night match on Sunday.
Yeah, in a good way, Ryan, for us to dive on in to Sacramento Republic. I'm sorry, Roro. That was not respectful to you to make a
Well, Roro
segue
didn't
of
dive.
such little
Someone
quality.
dove into him.
I just was saying that maybe I should have some more straight spinedness for one of the greats that goes out in a mind boggling fashion. That it's just unfortunate that the red card happened the way it did. Didn't really feel like those Reds influenced where the game was heading. Also, just felt like a great, like I think I said it before, Catenaccio translated in Italian just means door bolt. OC, door bolts, and Sacramento had no ideas to get through that door with any kind of breaching charge of any kind.
I want to be a little bit friendlier to Orange County for what they
Okay.
did defensively
Okay.
in particular, because I mean, how many times have we ragged on this defense,
Yeah.
especially given the injuries, and really doubted that they could do this in the postseason? So on that front and that front alone, let's give Orange County their flowers. That said, this game was interesting because, I mean, Ryan hinted at it with the passes back and forth between 𝗧𝗏 and Partita. It felt like it was played at half pace a lot of the time. And it took individual moments on Sacramento's side from Blake Willie to really kick things into gear. I thought he was exceptional at pushing the pace, being creative, and kind of showing the fearlessness that almost every other team in the first round lacked. And Orange County, once they stopped him, once they slowed Sacramento down and ground this thing to a halt, there weren't really other moves in the final third. And I thought Neil Collins was smart in the way that he used Rara on the left, which was going to lessen his defensive burden given how Orange County tends to attack. And then it set up Christian Pirano to play on the right, get behind Ryan Dogman and challenge that seam. In theory, should have been great, and there just wasn't that execution there. And yeah, you get to the end of the game, Tetsuya Kadono, what else can explain it? Like just an unbelievable gusto from Danny Stone to throw him into that
Yeah.
mix. Yeah, so impressive and bold on that front in a game that lacked some of that otherwise.
Yeah. And, like Danny Stone was the guy who largely was in charge of making substitutions during the Rising run in chorus with Juan Guerra. Talked to him about that before their playoff game last year and how to assess those moments. And it's a very collaborative thing. Like he trusts his bench a lot to be making those analyzations about what the game calls for. Obviously, it would have been a prior rehearsed thing. I was doing like stats and research as well as Ryan for the broadcast for that game and sent the guys who were on the call. Shuttler had only stopped one of the last 13 penalties he had faced. So, like, clearly it wasn't like a spur of the moment thing, but we're talking about a rookie who, like, just hadn't played at
Yeah,
all. And he saved 3 penalties. Like, it's just immense.
I thought Mike Watts did a really good job of portraying that fact throughout the show.
What fact?
Burn it, huh?
You cut out so heavily.
You cut out real bad.
He's frozen again.
Yeah.
My internet is really bad. It's
It's
telling
all
me it's
good.
really bad, but I also have 85 bars right now. I
85.
thought Mike Watts did a really good job of
All
portraying that, right? This is a guy. This is a
Mercedes.
guy that had never had a pro contract until the beginning of this year, right? Um, I also really don't know, and I wanted to ask Peyton maybe more so than John, again from the goalkeeper side of things. Does tape on the goalkeeper matter? Like that was a point that was brought up as well, I think, on the show of, well, they don't know where 𝗟𝗃𝗃𝗀𝗃 is going to dive. It's like I don't know. I don't know. I thought that was that was the game for me was making that choice. It was really curious. I didn't see a lot in this match throughout. I think John points out the story of the actual 120, which was Orange County's resilience defensively. And then you get into this moment. We'll talk about the red cards, plural. Um, I didn't understand it. Obviously, it matters. It was changed. We don't have to understand it. Danny Stone understood it. But I was very curious about that and your take on does a goalkeeper, does the goalkeeper matter? Because for
The,
me, I would kick the ball where I want to kick the ball no matter who the
the
goalie is.
goalkeeper matters. Obviously, I've never been in the mind of the shooter. Obviously, I've never been anywhere close to this level. So, like, let's put that
Correct.
out there as a very average, lower level high school club goalkeeper. Um, in my mindset, it was always about randomness for me. So I obviously would read body language, but I didn't want to know anything about what they had done prior, right? Because I didn't want to be thinking in that moment at all. So in my mind, no amount of tape on what I had done previous should affect the outcome of the shootout because of exactly what you just said. The shooter should be thinking, I'm just going to put it where I'm supposed to put it. It's very different, I would imagine, for a shooter than a goalkeeper because, like, you just played 120 minutes. You're not trying to call back like the film study that you did on the goalkeeper for penalties in case that
And I'm
happens,
expected
right?
to score for what it's worth. I'm
Exactly.
expected to score.
The goalkeepers provided every advantage from a mental capacity in a shootout. And obviously Cardona was excellent in that, but I think again, like it was being good at penalty shootouts as a goalkeeper is just being decisive. Like that is the biggest thing. If you are indecisive, you will not be good at that skill as a goalkeeper. Period. Point blank. For a young player to have no second thought about their actions in that moment, the real first moments of their professional career, is insane to me. So,
The explosiveness off the line,
yep,
you could tell that guy was committed whenever he dove. And I'm sure Colin Shuttler would try to do the same thing, but Cardona had the goods, and that's why Orange County advanced.
yeah. Let's because the shootout is a coin flip. Orange County earns the right to make a coin flip of a game where they didn't have the advantages, right? That I think is the important thing to note, and that's true with all the shootouts that we saw with underdogs winning over the course of the weekend. Is you earn the right to make this game into a game of roulette, right? Like that, you become the equalizing force in the game. For Orange County, in terms of Danny Stone and what he did here in this moment, Tristan Traeger ends up being massive, Ryan, down the stretch. You were right the whole time, never wrong, just early. Um, the 4-4-2, it felt like it was always destined to come back to Danny's most natural partner. The ways that manifested in this game and the ways that maybe this could power Orange County to doing something similar to what they've done in the past and maybe being dangerous down this playoff run, does that mean anything to you? The way that they kind of, when I say door bolt, I mean the way that they limited the dangerous chances from Sacramento, not the way that they were like truly against the ball.
Yes, because the spine was uniquely strong. And
Yes.
yes, John pointed out some of the defensive things they did well, but it comes down to the fact that Nico Benalcazar as a center back was controlling. He was proactive, I felt. Vuk Latinovic was more than serviceable, which usually if he's serviceable, you're okay. And it looks as though Tom Brewitt may be able to play at least 45 minutes or so of a part of maybe the next game or the next two.
Mm-hmm.
And then you say, hey, buddy, you got if they get to the final, it's like, hey, Tom, you got one game. Just die out there, basically.
Yep.
And he probably would. Like, looking at Tom Brewitt, you see two
Joe
things:
Lowry.
a dude that would die for the badge, and the big boss, right? So, and then the last player, probably the most important player of all the ones we're going to name, Stephen Kelly was so good. He was best player on the field. He was
Mm-hmm.
best player on the field. And in a midfield that included Blake Willie, who we've raved this year, former all-leaguer, maybe Justin Portillo, if not very close to being all-leaguer, Justin Portillo and Roro Lopez, who might be the greatest player in league history. Stephen Kelly looked the best on the ball. He looked the best Off the ball, he looked the most attached to his back line while also being able to progress to the wide areas to allow Jamison and Traeger to advance and be productive, and Haggart, before he got sent off, to be productive-ish in a nil-nil game. Stephen Kelly was everything you want. And I go back with Orange County to the mid-season mark when they got rid of Kyle Scott, who we thought was
Yeah.
going to be the big piece for this team to work in its transition sense because Kyle Scott was the ball swinger, the retainer, the mover that allowed them to get going. And they got rid of him. They replaced him with Stephen Kelly, who is clearly a better defender. Definitely not as good of a mover of the ball because it's hard to be, but he's just good enough to where it's negligible. And with the defensive additives, he has not changed it, but he can change Orange County's midfield and the spine and make them a threat when they are up for it mentally, as they were on Sunday night.
The reality is this, like this game kind of is in a single picture, Kelly with blood pouring from his face, and like I don't think he blinked. Like literally don't think he blinked. Like the lock in, the focus, the representation of what this team in this shape can be with Kelly and Partita on the field, which is something, John, you brought up a lot earlier in the year that I kind of discounted what the capacity for the spine could be with those two specifically. I think that's probably the biggest reason why they got this result, no?
Yeah, and I mean, you think about the way that they look when they possess. It's the two center backs and then Kelly and Partita at their level. And that is useful in two directions because in the if a turnover arrives, you've got an elite resting base.
Yep.
Partita is an absolute bulldog, and Kelly is an upgrade on Kyle Scott defensively. So you're not going to give up easy transition chances. With the ball, Kelly, like we have said, is just good enough breaking lines. Partita loves to be a third man runner in central areas. It's a maybe unsexy combination, but they're very effective, and especially against a team like Sacramento that's pretty willing to sit in that 5-2-3 at a mid-low height and try to frustrate you. Orange County was the better team in those situations, and that was critical to grinding this through to the end. Real quick on the Brewitt thing, they went back five for about 15 minutes
Mm-hmm.
with Brewitt in the game helping to see things out, and the red card blew that up. But for Danny Stone to have this card and say, okay, if we have a lead, we're willing to throw on that added defender, that's something that's going to be very useful for them.
Yeah, and the thing that now becomes massively important is okay, Chris Haggard is suspended for the next game. So does that affect, because he's so essential to how this shape operates for them, does that affect the squad selection? Is there maybe more of an elbow idea in play here? Can Nico Ben Alcazar potentially play a similar role, or will they go to Cam Dunbar, a Mamadou War, or an Ousmane Sia? Like, there's so many different options they could use
Sia
here.
feels like the fit,
And I
hopefully.
agree with that. I do, but like that also takes away a very specific guy that you need off the bench in games like this, right? So like that's going to be fascinating. But yeah.
And that's where it goes to me for the next match, right? Is who's the difference maker now for you? We talked to Danny Stone earlier in the year, and we had this whole conversation about Scylla versus Haggart, connector versus Dynamo, right? And Scylla more of a pick your pocket, make you frustrated by the spaces he finds, and then how good he is on the ball at just driving at you, being aggressive, which is a really important thing to have on the bench in these playoff matches in a nil-nil game or in a nil-1 game where you need to chase and need to find that difference maker. Who does that become? Do you move Bryce Jamison to the bench and opt for Cameron Dunbar to start, who's a little bit more of a efficient winger rather than a live wire winger, though he has the live wire qualities at this point in Dunbar's USL tenure? I think we can all agree that he is built more on the efficiency than Bryce Jamison is. He'll have weird choices to make. I think the thing that stands out to me for this one is the first time in the 2 years we've seen Danny Stone as a manager really fully adopt change. And that back five was evident to me of a willingness to do something different to make sure the result was had or to give themselves the best chance to earn said result. We had not really, I think, seen Danny Stone sway too far away from the principles that powered his Orange County teams at its best and depleted his Phoenix and Orange County teams at their worst. So that's the thing I think that stands out for me is I have newfound faith in Danny Stone's ability to impact a game in the
Yeah,
playoffs,
yes, yes,
which
yes.
might just be everything
Yeah,
at the end of the day.
we look at the rising playoff run and his role in that as Wangero's number two. Look at last year with Orange County, where they were the one who came the closest to laying a glove on Colorado Springs, and that game could have gone either way. It went to extra time. Colorado Springs just had more guys to bring off the bench to influence things at the end. And now this Sacramento, like Danny Stone rightfully has earned a reputation as a guy who is really good at managing these moments. So that's all said. I think we've given enough praise to Orange County. Now let's look at Sacramento. For Neil Collins, another guy who has that reputation of understanding how to win these playoff games. Do we think he got it right with the starting 11 and then how he managed it after that? Obviously, things blow up, as you said, John, with the red cards.
I mean, it is a tough question to answer in that we've seen so many permutations of this Sacramento team. Like, it's hard to know what actually is the best version of the Republic because these last 2 months have been so full of changes and
Mm-hmm.
tweaks. I health permitting, you would have loved to see Russell Cicerone in the lineup. I'm a little bit surprised that Sebastian Herrera was the choice over Corey Bennett, kind of in the same vein as the Goodrum thing, right? Like you go out and sign Corey Bennett to be the impact player in these situations. Herrera has his utility as a hold-up player, as a presence in that vein, but that's not really what you need when you're facing a team like OCSC. Would I have liked to see Dominic Vonner? Maybe. He's been in terrific form. He's a great
Mm-hmm.
transition player. You think about that combination of him with Jack Gurr up the right side. That's how you get past Dogman. That's how you expose Kelly. And we didn't see any of those eventualities. It felt like a Sacramento team that was too conservative, a little bit too defensive. And it's caution that really hasn't ever defined Neil Collins and was thus surprising to see on this stage.
That being said, there's good depth for this. That's the first thing I noticed with the six subs. Like Ryan
Yeah.
Spalding is a good sub to bring on,
Yeah.
especially when Portillo arguably could have been sent off. Has to kind of come off at halftime because you don't want the player on the yellow card out there. Not in a game like this. Cody
Yeah.
Baker's been a really good player. That is, I think they spoke on the broadcast, allowed Sacramento to be a little more versatile with how they set up and how they attack and how they build. Um, Corey Bennett, and I think Peyton has a number here on this. In a playoff match, typically I would not mind Corey Bennett off the bench with the understanding this game could go long. Sebastian Herrera does his job at the front rather than the end. Corey Bennett's paid to score goals. He's got to come off the bench and do that in this match. Now I will step back on my own point there by saying, who is the two seed in this 2 versus 7? Who is at home? Who is
Right.
supposed to be the protagonist? It's supposed to be Sacramento. You start Corey Bennett. You take it to the other team. You try and score the early goal. And if you need to bring Sebastian Herrera on to seal a game late, that's where you do it. And then Cicerone, I think, is as you point out, right? He should be a starter, but circumstances there. I would have loved to have seen him and Pirano on the pitch at the same time, but that would have required you to drop Roro Lopez deeper, and I did not see the value to that maybe in this game, as Roro did a good job while he was on the pitch.
I just think about the time these teams played at the beginning of October, where Sacramento was in a weird spot because of the Jaeger final, but it was a 4-2-4 essentially, and one of the widest looks we've seen from Sacramento, and it took Orange County to task. You think about the 3-3 game Orange County played against New Mexico. That was all about the two wingers exposing Orange County in the wide areas. If you're going to beat this team, you've got to do it through the channels and at the sidelines. And Sacramento played the narrowest possible lineup that they could. I don't know. That feels like a miscalculation from Neil Collins.
It just, the more I think about it, the more I kind of realize that if you pictured how Sacramento would lose as a two seed at home in the first round throughout the course of the season, this is it. Like, this is exactly how that would have played out. And it just kind of harkens back to a thought that I had throughout the course of the season, where it's like, oddly enough, this never felt like Neil Collins' Sacramento Republic. It never felt like it was his team or any kind of expression of his ideas about the game. And it was in a lot of ways, and now it's confirmed, one last ride for the old guard, for the Sacramento Republic project. For, the Luis Felipe's, the Roro Lopez's, I hesitate to say Danny Vitiello is part of that potential group of Coles, but yeah, like the reality is that I expect wholesale change from a personnel standpoint for a team that felt incomplete in many ways throughout the entirety of the season and was very reluctant to splash the cash for new acquisitions the way that some of their contemporaries did this year. They tried to improve it in the technical area, and I think they did. But next year, before they head into a new stadium, they, in a lot of ways, to me, are the most interesting team in this offseason, and what they do and the questions they answer. Them and now Louisville, because I have no idea what Louisville does at this
I mean, the interesting thing with Sacramento, they've got a couple of guys on longer term contracts. Some of this core at a minimum is going to stay around. But I think, in a way, Rodrigo Lopez's retirement is a nice line of demarcation to say, okay, that's the end of this specific era. Now, Neil, go and let's really make this
Yeah.
your team.
It's permission to move on, almost.
Right.
And again, shout out Roro, one of the all-time greats on the Mount Rushmore. Very unfortunate for him
I
to
mean,
literally, this is a cheap shot,
So,
and I don't mean it by any offense, but literally go out swinging. Um, yeah, he deserved better than that. It's very unfortunate, but so goes sports. This is a cruel game.
yeah, and he should have known better, I think, in another sense as well. It's very hard in the moment. I've very much been there at a much lower level, so I can only imagine how difficult it was to be put in that situation and not retaliate there, but he should have, I think, known better. I think Hagar rightfully and intelligently, like Chris Hagart's very important to what Orange County is. I think Chris Hagart, as soon as he got engaged with that, knew what he could accomplish. Because I don't think Chris Hagart is unaware of things like that. I don't think a lot of players at this level are, yeah, unaware of things like that. I think Chris Hagart got what he wanted out of that situation. And it is unfortunate, but at some point it's also strange. I would also point out, and this also feels harsh against Sacramento, and this is kind of the last thing I have on a broad perspective for Republic. If it's the end of an era, it's one that might be defined more by disappointment than anything else. Like they were so good, so talented, should have won multiple Western Conference titles, yet never did. So maybe it is a good thing that they have to commit to Neil Collins and commit to the next phase
Yeah,
of
finally
this
grow up.
project. Maybe it is a
That's
good
unfair.
thing for them.
Yeah, like I said, finally grow up. That is not fair. This is one of the most forward-thinking and inspired organizations in the league. But in a way, it does feel like they need to accept who they are becoming now. And this is a little push towards that because to go out in the first round in consecutive years for Sacramento Republic, that is always going to be the trigger for tectonic change because that's not working for them. So that being said, the two numbers, and then we can move on because we've done an hour on 3 games at this point. Uh, since Ryan called for it to close the loop, Corey Bennett had scored 11 goals in the second half of games over the last 2 years, which is of active players tied for, I think, fifth most. So, like, maybe using him as a substitute. I don't know if he needs to start a game to have that kind of impact in the second half. Some players are like that. This is a number I happened upon, and Ryan said something, so I mentioned it. And to return the favor, because Ryan dug very hard to present this number to me, I want to make sure that it is presented to the people, just to really make sure that people understand how impressive what Detroit City did was. They had never won against Louisville City at Lynn Family Stadium. And prior to that game, that, by the way, they won 1-0, they had been outscored 14-2. The USL Championship. With that, we can now look at some of the teams that profit from this anarchy. The games themselves, other than New Mexico, and maybe that's where we should start, I don't think any of the performance were that, I guess, breathtaking from the teams that we should talk about here in this moment. Specifically, though, it feels like Pittsburgh, New Mexico, and Tulsa now have everything to push for. Like, this is for clubs that haven't won the big one yet. this is their moment to do what Colorado Springs did last year.
100%. I mean, with the big contenders out, all of the upsets we saw, those are the clubs that can now lay claim to probably being the prohibitive favorites
Yeah.
in their respective conferences to go on and do this thing. And you mentioned New Mexico. They're the only team that didn't fall into the negativity field tilt trap. Like they were open, they understood the timing of everything, their spacing was immaculate. They had San Antonio on a string. And I can't say enough about how disorganized that press was from Carlos
Yes.
Simosa and San Antonio. You often look for like a pressing trigger. You try to figure out what is provoking a team to step forward and apply pressure. San Antonio felt like 11 headless chickens with no direction other than a fly at the ball, and New Mexico eviscerated them,
Yeah.
which speaks in and of itself to the structure that Dennis Sanchez has set up to make it happen. But my biggest takeaway outside of the upsets, frankly, was New Mexico has a gear to them that can play in November and maybe makes them the favorite of any team left.
They easily had the most impressive performance of the weekend. I mean, we talk about only 6 goals
Yeah.
getting scored. They scored 2 of them. Um, so yeah, like John, the headless chicken thing is good. The thing that it reminded me of is when you play like FIFA on the startup, like the thing that is like, here's how you play the game. And then like 𝗧𝗵𝗴𝘂𝗂𝗲 can just pick up the ball betwixt 5 people and just like go where he wants with it and just walk away. Um, that was dire from San Antonio in a way that if I were waking up as an SAFC fan, I would feel physically hungover if I cared about that team heading into the next day. It just was not. It looked like an apathetic regular season performance, let alone your season's on the line. It looked like a team that wanted their season, not so harshly as to say, but like almost wanted their season to be over. It's been a hard year for San Antonio.
I
Um,
don't I don't know if there's much to like. I think New Mexico United looks so good because San Antonio looked so bad. I think there's a part to play there. I do think this was a match. As much as New Mexico was really darn good, I think it does fall a little bit on the absence of any San Antonio, at all. Um, that being said, as the podcast's resident Dennis Sanchez, save me, I want to hug you like guy. They did a good job. Like
put it on
New
a t-shirt.
Mexico did everything they needed to do. They platform, and I use the word platform in particular. They platform Talon
Yeah.
Maples expertly.
Yes.
And this was the match. Yes, we've talked about him as a right back the last couple of weeks. This was the match where it was on display. I think he can dictate so much more from that right side, invite more pressure from that right side to create more space for 𝗧𝗵𝗴𝘂𝗂𝗲 to walk up the pitch on FIFA beginner mode, for Gideon 𝗟𝗟𝗓 to work on just playing 5 yard passes all game. And they can shade him over to take Gideon 𝗟𝗟𝗓's physical ailments or deficiencies out of the match a little bit. Valentin Noel was, I thought, really good even without the goal. If he didn't score the goal, I still would have thought he was the most impactful player on the pitch in the pockets he picked up, the spaces he seemed to guide himself into to receive or even to
Yeah.
not receive the ball. He allowed 𝗵𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗲 to have more space and Deion Harris to have more space with all of his movement. It just felt like it meshed well. And again,
Yeah.
I want to preface that even I think a lot of that was because of San Antonio, but New Mexico felt like the team that was most connected and most willing to be connected this
Yeah.
week.
Down to the Valentin Noel, if we are to erase the goal, like down to the moment where he boom shotted one off the post from like 26 yards in the first 5 minutes of the game, it's like, oh, they're on, right? And like the fact that it didn't wake San Antonio up at all, I think was telling. John, a number that stuck out to me that I think is emblematic of where New Mexico have gone with the verticality and the way they get to that verticality, because I do want to talk about Maples. I think that's the headline here. But before doing so, 4 offsides against New Mexico United in this game. That's awesome. Like that's growth. That's them trying to play in behind a Deion Harris and a Kale and understanding what that can do to open up their game model. It feels like they have the best understanding of themselves
I
right
mean,
now of
Peyton,
any
that's just
team.
an average night out for Augie Williams. Like,
This is true.
why
This is
are
It's
we
true.
why are we gawking at that number,
Yeah.
man?
Gawk indeed. Yeah. So like, I just to me it's so weird though because it feels like New Mexico had the best understanding of themselves of any of the remaining teams, which is wild.
I mean, a team that felt like they were going to be one note for so much of the year has
Yeah.
suddenly become a diverse attack that can do a million different things. It's why I'm so high on them, frankly. Like to see them adapt and succeed so unequivocally within that adaptation, really promising.
Yeah. I mean, if they are to win a title, the strange flashpoint will end up being a good thing that they had injuries at center back because it forced them to go get Kip Keller, which put this solution on the
Yeah,
table for them.
yeah.
Um, the Maples thing at right back by the week starts to look like a Mona Lisa of a tactical move and what it affords them. His
So
capacity to pick up the ball on the right and switch the play makes it so hard to prevent access to their pivot players because as you're trying to compress that space and put that box around the two midfielders dropping in, as a midfielder on the backside of the play on the weak side, you have to be thinking all the time, I may have to turn around and chase a ball that's traveling over my head to the opposite touchline so that they don't get out and instantaneously get into the final third with numbers. Like it is a real game changer for them.
it's right where I was going with it from the perspective of if he has the field open and when you're a right back versus a center back, it's a completely different visual
Yes.
reality that you exist in. I remember when I had to learn how to play center back and it was just a different world. Now his body is, you know, parallel to the touchline. He is turning and he has really three options: midfielder that invites, play a quick 1-2, and then switch it out to Gideon 𝗟𝗲𝗂. Usually 𝗍𝗂𝗡𝘂𝗧 is the one coming in. He has the switch of play that Peyton is talking about, looping ball to the left side center back, swinging ball to the left back to switch the point of attack, which New Mexico did a gazillion times in this match. It felt like just turn. Okay, left side, right side. Or we have the ball that we've talked about a lot this year, which is head up, open hips, right back swings an early diagonal in behind the back line between the center back and the goalkeeper and put the back line under pressure. So by putting Talon Maples in that position, where his best quality might just be long pass accuracy, the diagonals from long, and being good on the ball as the center back. Now you put him in a position to put all three lines of the opposition's defense under pressure. The center backs and the back four have to be aware of a ball in behind them and a ball in front of them. If he skips to a dropping in, false 90, Greg Hurst. Or it can go behind to a Deon Harris on the other side or a 𝗵𝗂𝗂𝗂 on the other side if they've swapped. They have to be aware of the midfield combinations connecting with Maples and also be aware of, hey, if they connect, they could switch. If they don't connect, he could switch. You just have to be so much more on your toes with that. I think that adds a lot of element and a lot of elements and a lot of space for the rest of the players there that just makes it a little bit easier for New Mexico United to put the game on their terms, whether it's vertical or whether it's, a much more concise, small scale effort of an attack.
Yeah. Um, John, I'm gonna pass something your direction here now. 𝗍𝗂𝗡𝘂𝗧 is close to being, I think, a like legitimate star player in this league. If this is going to be the guy that we're seeing match week in, match week out, was what he did this weekend maybe the most impressive individual performance that nobody seems to have talked about?
Yes, and it's because of what he did with and without the ball,
Yes.
frankly. Every single run that he made was designed to open up space for Gideon 𝗟𝗂𝗂𝗂 in the middle, while also presenting him own self, 𝗍𝗂𝗡𝘂𝗧, as an option between the lines, but also keeping this awareness of where do I need to be if there's a turnover. He's operating on all these planes at once as if he's the avatar of Dennis Sanchez on the pitch. And then when he gets the ball, he can march upfield. He's very technical on the dribble, good about keeping the ball tight to his feet. He just does every little thing that Sanchez needs for this lineup to make sense. You're dead on to say like he's approaching star level. And he's in the morass that defensive minded midfielders often get into, that if you don't get the goals and assists, you don't get the acclaim. But I'm happy you bring him up because what he does for that team is exceptional.
Yeah, it just is. I think he is the most impressive coaching job that Dennis has done over these last 2 years in the sense of where the player was and where the player is now, what they are now, because that freneticism, that explosiveness was always what his game was. And that was always going to be a streaky player. What he's become is concise and almost to a point where it can be overwhelming, persistent in his activity, but that activity is now intentional instead of random in a way that like sets the drumming beat of a New Mexico team that sometimes could lull into a lullaby. I think he has made it over these last couple of weeks to where that doesn't happen in a way that is reproducible and an onslaught for other teams to deal with. And we will see how Orange County chooses to deal with that. But that midfield battle is the most interesting battleground in this next round of the playoffs for me,
Yeah.
of any of the games. Ryan, do you
Yeah.
have anything else on your sweet baby
No,
boys?
I think it's well said of 𝗧𝗵𝗂𝗂𝗧𝗂𝗵𝗂𝗂. I think it's the rare case where someone who's a very clear and obvious overcoacher and someone who asks you to have five solutions all at once is good for a player. I also think in an interesting way, you learn what kind of player Zico Bailey is because there's a clear growth and understanding from him on a tactical level, which he's always been smart at. I think selling him short there is silly, and I'm not saying you were.
Yeah.
I'm saying I think a lot of people do. Um, as this live wire player, he's clearly a very smart player. The ability to play as a right back, a right 10, a left 10, an 8, a 6, a false 9. This is an intelligent individual that a coach recognized was intelligent. A coach recognized he could heap a lot of information upon the player and trust the player to do so. And I think in the process, it slowed the individual down and amplified everything else in this very fluid, functional, fun New Mexico midfield.
Okay. Do you have anything to say, either of you two, about the other two games that were referenced a moment ago? Pittsburgh beating Hartford in the shootout, a game where I think largely they just looked like the better team and weren't able to cash that in for anything. And Tulsa team that got a gutty 1-0 win over a team that just won a title.
Good for Tulsa.
Brief shout out to Colorado Springs, who obviously went to Tulsa and got blown out last weekend. James Chambers used Yosuke Hanya as a defender off ball, which was pragmatic to say the least, but really slowed Tulsa down. So valiant attempt there, but Tulsa is a machine.
We will talk about Colorado Springs, I'm sure, over the offseason. They
Yeah.
are the team in this batch of eight that got eliminated, even with all the good teams that got tossed that might have weird directions. Colorado Springs is the one that fascinates me the most on what they do, where they go. Um, and, you could also bring the postmortem to the show's favorite team this year in Hartford. Like the growth, the step in the right direction that it made, and Athletic should be very proud of that. It was awesome. I just wonder if that was it. Like, did we see Hartford at its powers, peak at the right time to win a trophy, but will they stall again? And that's the thing that I take away from that match against Pittsburgh was what's next for Hartford. Pittsburgh did a great job. They were the better team. I think they're the clear favorite in the Eastern Conference at
Yeah.
this point. But the takeaway for me was what's next for Hartford.
Yeah. It's unfortunate. They came to the end of the year, weren't at their best, following beating Sacramento doubly, right? Like it looked like, okay, they're going to carry this momentum on the bounce. They put in a really professional performance against Oakland, came back on the
Hmm.
road, got a win in the midweek following that game, um, and then flew back home and then beat Sacramento again. It's like, okay, there's no reason why this team can not potentially win the East. They are the
Yep.
third favorite in the East. And then they still at the end of the year. And then you just kind of wonder, okay, as you said, what now? But that Pittsburgh is playing without Bob Lilly. Let that sit for a second. The only manager the club has ever known, not with the club starting
Well, yeah.
well, but I mean, like he literally has presided over every Riverhounds game, correct? At the championship level? Is that not the
No,
accurate
no,
statement?
no. They had years before. They had pre-Lilly
The
seasons.
modern, like, yeah, maybe not the modern, but like
He only got there in what, 17, 18?
18, I think
I think
18.
he,
Yeah.
I, I think the number is though he has more wins with his current club than any other active manager in the USL
That
Championship.
is correct. Yeah.
So the reality is though that it like they're doing this without a constant force, and maybe they're growing into what they can be as a club in the present tense. I think is what we're seeing in real time. And the thing to talk about here to me is the way they use width. This was a conversation I had with you, John. They didn't manufacture anything from it, and the big number that popped out during research for the show for the first round as a whole. Teams that won games, this does not include the games that went to penalty shootouts because those were technically draws, averaged 10.4 crosses per 90 minutes. The teams that lost the games averaged 26.64. Actually, that's just everybody else. So, like the teams that went to the shootouts and the teams that lost. I think that is telling about what this weekend represented in a lot of ways. Teams that didn't use width very well and were inefficient there didn't do well. I don't think Pittsburgh should be included into that group, though. I thought that the way they used the width was actually very good. Junior 𝗟𝗂 has been an unsung hero.
Absolutely. The way that he is able to combine with Robbie Mertz up that left side, the level of interchange that they bring to the table, which I think doesn't get enough love, and how that forces opposing defenses to bend and then gives you what we've talked about a lot through the central spaces. One of those pivot players is able to step up, usually Danny Griffin, but Bradley Sample does the same thing from time to time. There are constantly options. Pittsburgh can overload you in the flank. They can move from side to side. It can be in zone 14. Augie is probing. Whichever of the wingers isn't engaged is in the box. There's constantly weapons. And then it's all supported by maybe the best center back trio in the USL.
Yeah.
Again, hard to see how this team isn't the favorite in the East.
Certainly remaining trio, Ryan.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's that Louisville group, but like I
Right,
don't think
right.
it's that crazy a claim in terms of just isolating what they've been
The
over the last
balance of
month.
it is beautiful.
Over
Yes.
the last month,
Yeah.
if you were to take that in a vacuum, it might be the highest level of center back play, them
Mhm.
and Louisville throughout the year
I'll allow that. Yeah.
as a group. Yeah.
I want to circle back on the Rob Vincent of it all
Yep.
because he's been around the block. He was a
Yes.
Riverhound player at a time. He knows the Lily system inside and out, and it's the way he's innovated on top of it. Just giving players a little bit more freedom. And we talked about the midfield, but how many times has Beto Idrak made an underlapping run and made himself known in the final
Mm-hmm.
third? That's something that was not a facet of this team under Lily. It's so many of these tiny little things that are helping them grow and evolve and become more dangerous without sacrificing any of the identity.
Pittsburgh Riverhounds had 63% of the ball in this match, and that would never have been the formula for Pittsburgh Riverhounds 4 months ago, 4 years ago, and now it is. They're more exciting than they're given credit for. We've been saying that. I think it's starting to get across around the TV broadcasts and the rest of the league outside of Pittsburgh in terms of, hey, Pittsburgh are good on the ball, and Pittsburgh can beat you, not just make you beat yourself.
Yeah.
That's the layer that's super intriguing, and I think again, I think we're all kind of in agreement there. They're the ones to beat
Yeah.
in the East, even though they're not the highest payroll team or the team that technically has home field advantage throughout the rest of the East if they want it like North
Yeah.
Carolina is. But Pittsburgh's the best.
If Vactor's injury is significant because he does
Mhm.
come off in this game, and if he is not able to participate, how well, John, do you think 𝗬𝗓𝗓 can perform this job?
I mean, it's a downgrade. There's no two ways around that. They've kept 𝗬𝗓𝗓 around because they trust that he's fit for this sort of moment when called upon. I don't think it's going to be a deal breaker.
Okay. Yep, that feels like the only thing that could knock them off pace this weekend. Again, interesting that these back three teams have had these very mixed results throughout the playoffs because it felt like we were coming back into a back three era. All of a sudden, all the back three teams didn't do so good in the first round, aside from Pittsburgh, who also played a back three team. And it's them in Detroit, and those are the last two predominantly back three teams standing, correct?
Phoenix
But
erasure
aside
from
from those
Peyton
guys,
Gallagher,
Phoenix
man.
Rising
Wow.
apparently, which gets us to those two games. So the games that were kind of nothing games,
Did
not
they
to be
happen?
so
No.
unkind, could have been kind of simulated through. It felt like though, the NCSC Loudon game, Loudon just kind of go out with a whimper, and then Phoenix finding a way to win against El Paso. They've not conceded a goal since Moses was wearing sandals.
I'm just gonna say finding a way to win undersells how absolutely dominant Phoenix looked.
Sure.
I
Okay.
threw this out before the show. El Paso's zero point 0.1 XG is the least that any playoff team has ever had since they started tracking XG in the USL. Like, I don't know what else you do if you're Phoenix. That was basically a perfect game defensively.
Yeah. It was suffocating. Phoenix Rising just about drilled everything, and there was clear growth. This is the only thing positive from Phoenix that I really have from this weekend. Being there versus watching it again this morning, very different feelings on the match. Obviously, from a more calculated perspective, the only positive development I have from a Phoenix Rising perspective is 𝗟𝗲𝗴𝘂𝗲 and 𝗵𝗵𝗶𝘀𝘀 looked more connected, which we thought was going to be the big problem. And 𝗟𝗲𝗴𝗂𝗀𝗴𝗂, while nowhere near the player on the ball as Colin Smith is, was just about good enough to get put in trouble and get out of trouble, and also be a release when other players were put in trouble. He was always an option. He was always open. El Paso cared not to defend him for obvious reasons. He's a center back playing right wing back. Why should we have to worry about him? And halfway through the game, 𝗟𝗲𝗴𝗂𝗀𝗡 looked like a real threat to create with a cross, drive in behind, get out of trouble in two-man press triggers, and find the open man. He was very good. Jean Morceau was very good. Rafa Schihus playing as a left center back was very different. That surprised us on the Phoenix Rising Radio Network broadcast, but it worked because El Paso again had no real care for pressing the wide areas. The wide areas that consisted of 𝗵𝗵𝗶𝘀𝗀 and 𝗟𝗲𝗴𝗂𝗧𝗏 on the right, Phoenix's worst on-ball center back, and a center back playing right wing back, and Rafa Schihus, an old 36-year-old dude, as good as he is at defending space properly and all the things he does well, he's old. He'll tell you that. He's a straight shooter. And Ryan Flood was the starting left wing back in a playoff match. And El Paso paid no care to putting those four players under any kind of duress. And that's why El Paso Locomotive are going home. They did not try to take advantage of the theoretical weak spots of Phoenix Rising.
It's an inverse of San Antonio. San Antonio was absolutely aimless aggression that constantly ruined their structure. And El Paso let the game come to them and didn't press where it made sense to press.
Yep.
Equally bad failures, but kind of opposite sides of the coin.
Yep.
Weird stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I don't see a world where Phoenix Rising beats Tulsa if they don't find a way to create more attacking scenarios. Because Tulsa will find a way to. That's what Tulsa's been good at all year. Taking their shape and their identity, but putting it against your weak points. I don't see a way for Phoenix Rising past Tulsa unless more attacking improvement occurs that has not existed since this change has
Yeah.
been made. It's said it has had unbelievable benefits for Phoenix Rising's season. They are not here without this change, but it has completely taken away Phoenix Rising's ability to attack. The North Carolina game, when they had all their players for the full weight of it, in terms of Smith and Flores, was there. I don't think Colin Smith will play. I don't think Daniel Flores will play. You are still going to have the same problems. Tulsa will exploit those. And is Phoenix just that good and that gritty to get out of this? Would be the question I have. That's the only hope for them if they don't continue to improve the attacking patterns because they've not been good the
Yeah.
last month.
It sets a very, very stark picture for them because Tulsa have this capacity to be the alien symbiote, right? Of adapting to whatever your defensive structure is throughout the game and finding a way to kind of mold themselves through it with substitutions. Down to Stefan Lukic being the winner
Yeah.
in this most recent game against Colorado Springs. Like the Rising can't play a one-note defensive structure against the ball the entire game and expect to
No.
get out of 120 minutes having not been bloodied at least once.
And the last thing, because we praised 𝗟𝗲𝗴𝗂𝗀𝗃 playing out of position, I just said I had a caveat for every other player except Ryan Flood. I just kind of said he's Ryan Flood. Ryan Flood was pretty good in this match. Phoenix was really aggressive, tried to pin El Paso at times. They wanted to be the protagonist in this match. They just need more out of it. Um, and yeah, I don't think that'll be the case. I think Tulsa will want to play.
Yep.
El Paso looked like they did not want to play, and I do really think that's the reason a certain somebody is no longer there because they played their first home playoff match in 4 years, and everybody looked like they were already in Cancun. It just was there was no life from El Paso and Wilmer Cabrera, probably fired because of it.
Yeah. Shout out to one Mr. Bryant in Detroit. Speaking of um, Cancun
That was
and
crazy. Did you see
putting
that tweet,
people in
John?
Yeah,
places.
It was
yeah.
Yeah.
nuts. Did you
Um,
see the one today?
He's just going at it. Yeah, every time I refresh Twitter, Ryan's gotten more going on.
we love
So
that.
wild.
I love this league so much, man. I love
Who's
this league.
winning the USL Championship the rest of the way? Who's winning? All three of our Peyton and I both picked Charleston. John picked Louisville.
I picked Charleston over Sacramento most importantly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Who's winning?
Who's winning of these teams? I mean, it's a curse, whoever I say. So I don't know. Apologies to New Mexico United because I think they're going to win.
I have to go back to. I have two great options. I love Dennis Sanchez, and I had Tulsa doing weird stuff at the beginning of the year. I'm gonna go Tulsa lifts the trophy.
I'm calling one of the games this weekend, so I'm not gonna
Yeah.
It's okay,
Like,
say these
man.
things.
You can pick Louisville. Peyton, you can pick Louisville. It's
can I
okay.
circle
Yes,
back real quick on the Michael Bryan of it all?
yes,
Anytime a team is
please.
like, anytime a team is like, shout out to the haters, no one believed in us. What do you want, man? You were the eight seed. You were like bad all year. I don't know. I guess you can dunk on everybody, but whatever. I don't know.
Yeah,
Grinds my gears.
I've told Ryan this multiple times this year. Whereas, like, the only goal of starting this show was for us to have clips included in those videos. Like, that was my
Yeah,
only
Michael Bryant,
objective.
put this on a bulletin board, man. That's what I'm
Yes,
saying. I think you're gonna get smacked this weekend, and I don't even remember who you're playing right now.
yes. Like, I love, like, Devin Kerr, another Devin Kerr shout out on the show this week. I forget who the Rhode Island media member
Oh yeah, he was
was.
like
It
Tommy
was like
Quinlan and
pulled
Devin
the
Kerr
clip.
going at it on
He's
Twitter.
like,
Yeah.
nice bulletin board material, my guy. My turn. And it's like, yeah, everything that he said in that moment was fair. Like, we can only evaluate what's immediately in front of us. The lowest scoring game on earth. You get into a knockout tournament, weird stuff happens. It's that simple, right? Like, that's not indicative of what a team has been or will be or whatever. But yeah. Okay. Ryan did bring it up a little bit here to move on from Mr. Bryant in Detroit. Not the best thing that came out of Detroit this year in terms of just antagonizing. That's got to be the Connor Rutz Bigfoot video, right? Like, that's the best thing that happened at USL this year. He's real. But yeah, no. El Paso's got an opening now. Oakland's had an opening. We didn't really talk about Benny Feilhaber last week. There is already the churn starting to happen. Um, where do we stand on these things? And I just guess general thoughts as we head into that part of the lichen.
Presuming Loudon comes open, what are we?
Yeah,
And
and I was
technically,
gonna say we haven't talked about that game yet, but Loudon loses to North Carolina. I continue to stand on the fact that Ryan Martin is out of a job and is actively entertaining other offers at this moment. So Loudon has an opening there.
so that's three. Are we willing to count Pittsburgh, even though it feels like Rob Vincent probably gets that job if Bob Lilly doesn't have the job next year, depending on how that goes? Like, I don't want to.
That's a not an opening for me.
Okay. So like we
Yeah.
have three open gigs right now. We'll probably jump up to five, six.
Yeah, I'm
Five
just
feels
trying
like the solid over
It feels
under. Yeah.
small. It feels small.
We had so many in
in
season.
I know.
season.
Yeah, I know.
It would still end up being half of the league effectively turning over a little bit
Yeah,
less than in a year.
I agree. I was gonna get there, but like it just does. It's interesting. Like Oakland to me is the most intriguing project because of the stadium and the clear bump in attendance, which means there should be a clear bump in potential payroll and investment. Um, Loudon is, and I have no intel, but like I don't know. There's a dude who won a championship that's in that
just
building,
on staff.
just
Yeah.
supposedly watching people play soccer. getting paid to do it. Like I'd imagine you'd want him to coach people if he's won a championship, coaching people. That feels. We're talking about Alan
People
Marcina, correct, John?
around Loudon, like the beat reporter types, are saying it's either going to be Marcina or assistant Victor Lonchuk, who's pretty well considered around the league. So I would be surprised if they didn't keep it in-house there. Do with that what you will in terms of where this team goes. Given how many of these guys were like
Yeah.
tied at the hip to Ryan Martin, given his ability to work on a budget.
What is Alan Marcina's official title, John? Like, what is he on paper supposed to be?
Director of scouting.
He watches
Yeah,
John Morrissey, watching Alan Marcina, watching USL. It's a whole. Yeah, it's a whole. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I
El Paso's a weird one to me. I think they overperformed this year, and that's where I would like to close it. They overperformed this year. Wilmer Cabrera squeezed a lot out of a group that was filled with a lot of Wilmer Cabrera guys. They went from 12th to 4th, did better than they should have. Wilmer Cabrera deserves praise for that, but also I think more than likely did better than they should have because of the state of the Western Conference's very odd product this year.
yeah,
Um, and that also deserves to be factored in. Yes, you did a better job than we expected you to do, Wilmer. Yes, you achieved a lot comparatively to the quality I think we believe in his group, but it came in a year in which nobody save Tulsa, and I would count Sacramento up until, Sunday, November 2nd, wanted to win the Western Conference. And I think El
yeah,
Paso has better standards than that. A team that almost won the West in 2020, a team that was really competitive in 2019, a team that hosted a playoff game last time in 2021. When Mark Lowry was there, they were proactive, they were good on the ball, they had a style, they had an identity. And it didn't feel like that with Wilmer Cabrera. And I think that's what El Paso wants to have again. And I think that's why they've made the move.
yeah. Do we have any resolution on what's going on with Monterey Bay? It seems like things are going to hold firm there, correct, John?
Every indication is that Stewart is going to get another go with a
Good.
highly turned over roster.
Yeah, good. Right. So, I mean, hopefully everybody holds pat. We want everybody to keep their jobs. We're rooting for all the coaches. Let me make that very clear. We don't want anybody to get fired. If that was in question,
Is Peyton our
I don't
coach,
know.
John? Is that his role?
Win-win for the
Yeah.
Gipper.
I want one coach
Sporting
fired.
director.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Joe
Um,
Lowry, this is a message for you, buddy.
Joe is a sporting director for sure. Um, yeah, no, if I'm a coach, I'm Carlo Ancelotti, and not because of success, mostly because I'm just like, here's kind of what I'm thinking, guys. Let's go out there and kick some balls.
And John can execute it.
This is true. John is my Kaká, I think. I think that's adequate. And so the soccer will be on this weekend. You should go and watch it, and we will talk to you soon.